Hello everyone, and welcome to Eorzea Armoire, a series about the background of some of Heideland's more epic and dense weapons, armor, and artifacts. We'll be investigating the lore of these items, both within Final Fantasy XIV and the Final Fantasy franchise in general, as well as the amazing and sometimes obscure real-world people, events, and artifacts upon which they are based. Arthur said, "Though you do not dwell here, chieftain, you shall have the gift your mouth and tongue may name. As far as the wind dries, as far as the rain wets, as far as the sun runs, as far as the sea spreads, as far as there is earth. Except for my ship and my mantle, and Keldfuk my sword, and Rhongomiant my spear, and Winabgothucha my shield, and Carwenin my knife, and Gwennifer my wife." This is the only surviving unambiguous reference to Rhongomiant, and it comes from Kulhuch and Olwen, the oldest complete and extant Arthurian prose, but all it takes is a single direct reference from Arthur Pendragon for a sword or spear to pass into legend, and so we see the Rhongomiant in Final Fantasy XI as an Empyrean weapon for the Dragoon, as well as in Dissidia, Final Fantasy Explorers, and now Heavensward. Geoffrey of Monmouth refers to Arthur's spear only as Ron in his 12th century pseudo-historical Historia Regum Britanniae, which traces the Neo-Roman British kings from the great-grandson of Aeneas of Troy right up to the death of Cadwallader and the successful Saxon invasions of the 7th century. The poet Laomon translated Monmouth's work into Middle English around 1130 AD via the early French of Wace's Roman de Bru with commentary and notation. He too referred to this spear rarely and only as Ron. The later medieval and early romantic tales associated with King Arthur, such as Les Morts d'Arthur, are generally even more fantastical than those found in the Historia, and they tend to focus on his sword, Caliburn, or Excalibur. This is probably due in no small part to the popular conception in these times of the spear as a peasant's weapon, and so most of the deeds we can credit to Rhongomiant come from these earlier texts, Kulhuch and Olwen, and the Historia Regum Britanniae. As they tell it, the spear Rhongomiant was forged by a man named Griffin, who was in service to Arthur's father Uther Pendragon in the ancient Welsh town of Caerphillen, meaning the city of Myrddin, which was of course the Welsh name for the great wizard and sage Merlin. At the beginning of Arthur's campaign against Rome, he invaded Gaul, which was under the jurisdiction of the tribune Frollo, a man of superhuman stature and strength. Even though Arthur held Paris under siege and knew that his enemy within was withering, he agreed to meet Frollo in single combat to determine the outcome of the entire conflict. They fought on an island outside the city, and despite taking a near mortal blow from the massive Frollo, Arthur skewered him from his steed with Rhongomiant, cleaved his head in twain with Excalibur, and thus conquered Gaul. Another great feat, which we might credit to Rhongomiant, comes from Kulhuch and Olwen, in which the protagonist Kulhuch wishes to marry the daughter of Yspadaden Penkor, king of giants, but is set by the giant a Herculean series of challenges to shave for him his hair and beard using the tusk of a legendary boar and the blood of the Black Witch from the head of the Valley of Grief in the uplands of Hell. Kulhuch employs the aid of the knights of his cousin Arthur Pendragon, and it is Arthur himself whom determines to hunt the witch. Although many of his men are killed throughout this odyssey, Arthur defeats the Black Witch after a long battle in the depths of her cave, pinning her down with Rhongomiant and slicing her in half with his knife Carwenin. Finally, we know in Malory's Les Morts d'Arthur that it was ultimately a spear, likely Rhongomiant, which vanquished the traitor Mordred at the devastating Battle of Cumlan, which saw none survive but the knights Lucan and Bedivere. Then the king gat his spear in both hands and ran towards Sir Mordred, crying, "Traitor, now is thy death day come." And when Sir Mordred heard Sir Arthur, he ran until him with his sword drawn in his hand, and there King Arthur smote Sir Mordred under the shield with a foin of his spear throughout the body more than a fathom. And when Sir Mordred felt that he had his death wound, he thrust himself with the might that he had up to the burr of King Arthur's spear, and right so he smote his father Arthur with his sword holden in both hands on the side of the head, that the sword pierced the helmet and the brainpan. And therewithal Sir Mordred fell stark dead to the earth, and the noble Arthur fell in a swoon to the earth, and there he swooned oft times. Despite the legendary status of its wielder, this spear might seem like an underwhelming choice for the Dragoon Anima. It doesn't have the devastating blossoming steel of Gay Bolg, which can never be cast without taking a life. It is not soaked in the blood of Christ like the Longinus, and it is certainly not a sentient lance of pure light capable of destroying the immortal master of the underworld, like Brionac. When we look at these previous weapons of the Dragoon in their historical context, they seem to be gifts, charity from gods. They raise up the wielder with the supernatural powers that they possess. Their wielders are heroes because they wield heroic arms. Rhongomiant, on the other hand, seems a comparatively ordinary lance, a lance that is made heroic because it is wielded by a hero. Even though it doesn't score the killing blow against either Frollo or the Black Witch, and it isn't even named in Le Morte d'Arthur where it impales Sir Mordred, simply by association to King Arthur, it has become a weapon of legend. Prior to Heavensward, the Warrior of Light was a recipient of gifts and charity. We were powerful because we were gifted with the Echo, gifted with the crystals and the blessing of light, shielded from harm by our overbearing mother Hydaelyn. Since then, we have overcome the wards that Midgardsormr placed over our connection with the blessing of light, proving our worth for this power and for his respect. We have exceeded the limits and expectations placed on us by everyone without any further gifts or interventions, growing ever more powerful even as Hydaelyn herself rapidly weakens. The Warrior of Light, as it stands in Heavensward, is powerful by his or her own right. Like King Arthur Pendragon, we will make legends of our weapons. The anima literally grows powerful by its proximity to us and its participation in our deeds. It will no longer be weapons and gifts that make legends of us, and I think that Rhongomiant is a suitable reflection of this new chapter in the story of the Warrior of Light. But that is all the time we have for Rhongomiant today. I hope you found this episode illuminating and enjoyable, and if you did, do feel free to hit like, subscribe, and share with your friends. They're little gestures that can go a long way to supporting the channel so I can keep making content. As always, leave any questions or comments below, and thank you so much for watching. But until next time, I'm Ethys, and this is Eorzea Armoire.